Hello, good day to all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Manjeri. So today we will be dealing with the author Philip Larkin, and here is a brief biography regarding the author. This presentation is actually divided into two parts. The first part will be looking at Larkin's early life, and the second part would be dealing with the later life of the author. Larkin was born to Sidney Larkin and Eva Emily Day. He was born in Coventry. They were two children, Catherine and Larkin. Catherine, who is otherwise known as Kitty, was 10 years older than Larkin, and it has been noted that Catherine had been a great inspiration for Larkin to know more about literature. Their father was also a voracious reader, and he introduced the great writers like Ezra Pound, D.H. Lawrence, T.S. Eliot, and James Joyce to Philip Larkin while he was very young. Larkin was mostly educated from home until the age of 8. Many books suggest that the Larkin family had a secluded existence and not many relatives or friends actually visited the family. In fact, Larkin had a very lonely existence, and maybe because of this loneliness, he developed a slight stammer during this period. He was very much interested in jazz music. Now, this is a particular form of music which originated in Afro-American culture. Larkin studied at King Henry School, and he became very friendly with Jim Sutton, and this friendship lasted for a lifetime. Larkin was just an average student. Larkin used the pen name Brunette Coleman. But this pen name is not very famous, and nobody talks about this pen name when we discuss Larkin. The reason is that Larkin used this pen name only in the earlier stage of his writing, especially when he wrote as a student. He completed his studies from St. John's College, Oxford. Now let's have a look at St. John's College, Oxford, the beautiful campus, and the campus where the footprints of Larkin had been imprinted. Moving to the next slide, let's have a look at the former home of Larkin's parents. Moving on to the next stage of his life, let us have a look at the relationships that Larkin had. It was in the year 1944 that he met Ruth Bauman, and this is the first of his relationships, and she was a 16-year-old schoolgirl at that moment. The relationship continued, and it was after Larkin's father's death that he proposed her. It has also been noted by his biographers that they spent holidays at Wessex. I'm sure that all of you might have heard about the name Wessex. Most novels of Hardy were set in Wessex, and Larkin was a great fan of Hardy. Let's have a look at some pictures from Wessex. If you look at the pictures, you can see this beautiful place. Maybe the reason why Larkin selected this particular place to spend his holidays. Moving on to Larkin's later years, we can see that this slide will talk about his career and his academic results. Throughout his life, Larkin worked as a librarian. He started his career from the library at Wellington in the year 1943. Later, he joined the library at University College, Leicester. His interest in jazz music continued. It was in the year 1950 that he joined the Queen's University at Belfast. And it was from this university that he meets Monica Jones, a lecturer in English. Now, Larkin's relationship with Monica Jones is a long-standing relationship. Monica Jones was a married woman when her relationship with Larkin began. It is even suggested in books that she was even ready to leave her husband in order to be with Larkin. Larkin's another important relationship was his relationship with the writer Kingsley Amis. Now, Kingsley Amis has become very popular with his novel entitled as Lucky Jim. And most of the areas which had been described in Lucky Jim was a contribution from the part of Larkin. In 1955, Larkin became the librarian at Hull Bryn Jones Library. Later, he started a relationship with Maeve Brennan. If you look at Larkin's life, we can see that he had a very confused sexuality. He had too many relationships, but he never got stuck to one single relationship. Years later, he developed another relationship with Betty Mackworth, who worked as a secretary for him for 28 years. But in spite of all these relationships, the most disappointing fact is that Larkin never married in his life. He died at the age of 63. You can see Larkin's grave at Yorkshire. Now let's have a look at the women in Larkin's life. Larkin had so many relationships, but we are looking at the most important relationships that he had in his lifetime. The first was with Ruth Bauman. The second was with Monica Jones, the English lecturer. Then comes Maeve Brennan. She was a colleague of Larkin. And finally, Betty Mackworth, who was a secretary for Larkin for 28 years. If you look at all these relationships, we can see that the most constant and most beautiful and the most long-standing relationship that he had was with Monica Jones. They broke up at several occasions, but in many other occasions they came together. So it was a love-hate kind of relationship that he had with Monica Jones. So here you can see this is Monica Jones at her younger stage. The second picture is related with the trip that they undertook. Again, you can see Monica Jones as a very old lady, and it has often been described that Monica Jones had been Larkin's muse, confidante, and critique. Around 2,400 letters and postcards were actually exchanged between them. Now this picture, which portrays Larkin and his secretary, Betty Mackworth, you can see that these relationships actually developed during the later stage of his life. Again, you can see this is Larkin's home at Hull till his death in 1985. It was at this library at Hull where he worked for a longer period, which was around 30 years. Now this is again another rented home that Larkin occupied at Hull. Now you can see these are the two statues which were erected in memory of Larkin. The first one is Larkin as Toads and the second one is a statue at Hull. Both these statues were erected in order to commemorate his 25th death anniversary at Bryn Jones Library. Larkin has written a poem named as Toads, and this is in memory of that poem. The second one is a statue of Larkin. You can see it looks like as if Larkin is on the way to the library. He has a hat in his hand and he carries a book. It looks like a real life statue of Larkin. Now the program, his 25th death anniversary to commemorate his writing, was actually conducted at the Hull Truck Theatre. Moreover, this is a place where most of the drama productions actually took place in Hull Library. Now this is a blue plaque which was erected in Queen's University, Belfast. Let's have a look at Bryn Jones Library, where Larkin worked for 30 long years. So this is one side of the library. You can see this is the same library from another angle. Now this is the interiors of Bryn Jones Library. And this was the library where Larkin actually spent a major share of his life, that is around 30 years. So with this, we come to the end of the first part of Larkin's biography. But don't get worried, we will be back again with Larkin's style and movement poetry in the second part. So thank you very much for your patient listening. If there are any queries, any suggestions, any doubts or clarifications, please do not hesitate to connect with me in my mail ID. So thank you all. Thank you once again. Have a good day.